Okay, another day, another episode. And in today's episode, I'm going to start off as, of course, as I usually do with some current news. Without wasting any more time, let's get into the video. Okay, the first story that we're going to cover is that there was a shooting at Drake's mansion, which is located in Toronto, Canada. And the article reads as follows. It reads as, police are investigating a shooting outside rapper Drake's mansion in Toronto that left a security guard seriously wounded. Authorities did not confirm whether Drake was home at the time of the shooting, but said his team is cooperating with the police in terms of the investigation. The shooting happened around 2 a.m. Tuesday in the affluent Bridle Path neighborhood of Toronto, which is typically known as a rich neighborhood. And mostly you would find people who live in that neighborhood are either very successful entrepreneurs, or in this case, rappers, or just entertainers, or just people of some type of fame and influence. So, of course, the article reads on to say Toronto Police Inspector Paul Krawiecki said video of the shooting had been recovered, and the guard who was wounded is still remaining hospitalized. Okay, the next story reads as follows: the Atlanta City Council has agreed to pay $3.8 million to settle a lawsuit by the family of a church deacon who died in a struggle with city police following a minor car crash. Deacon Johnny Holman's family sued the city and the officer, Kieran Kimbrough, and the Atlanta Police Chief Darren Sumber in January, alleging Kimbrough used excessive force after the 60-year-old refused to sign, which is the deacon, refused to sign a citation, finding him at fault for the crash. The story continues saying, an attorney for Officer Kimbrough has said Holman resisted arrest, and Kimbrough acted lawfully when he deployed his stun gun and used force on him. Okay, the next story reads as follows to say that dozens are still missing after South African building collapse. 7 are confirmed to have died. The article starts off by stating that George, in South Africa, rescue teams used underground cameras and sniffer dogs on Wednesday to search for nearly 40 construction workers still missing in rubble 2 days after the collapse of an apartment building which was under construction in the coastal town or coastal side of South Africa, and 7 workers have been confirmed to have died and of course, while 16 of the 29 people rescued from the debris were in critical condition in hospitals, and an additional 6 had life-threatening injuries, authorities said. They said 39 workers are still unaccounted for and are most probably buried in the rubble of concrete and mangled metal scaffolding, or scaffolding. And that's basically it. And the next story reads as to say, Boeing 737 catches fire and skids off the runway at a Senegal airport. 10 people are injured. A Boeing 737-300 plane carrying 85 people caught fire and skidded off a runway at Senegal's main airport near the capital of Dakar. And of course, 10 people were injured in the crash, including the pilot. The country's transport minister stated this on Thursday. Passengers were evacuated from the burning aircraft at Beverley's Diagna Dine International Airport, and some described complete panic as they scrambled for their lives. The Air Senegal flight, operated by Transair, was headed to Bamako, Mali, and then it all of a sudden caught fire. So late on Wednesday, with 79 passengers, two pilots, and four cabin crew, when the crash happened on late Wednesday night, and the airport is located. The airport is seen to be or to yeah, it seemed to be located about 50 kilometers or 31 miles away from the capital city of Senegal, which is Dakar. Okay. Okay. That's all I had for current news. Okay, now let's move on to the sports section. And of course, we are gonna start off with the NBA. And of course, starting off, I'm gonna read out the results. Not so many since it's playoff season, and of course, it's about that time where teams go up against each other, and we are gonna know who's the best in the West, who's the best in the East, and finally, who's the ultimate best basketball team in the whole league. So, of course, on Tuesday, on the 7th of May, we saw the Nuggets absolutely get demolished by the Timberwolves by losing by 26 points as they lost 80 to 106. And then on Wednesday, we saw the Celtics also destroy the Cavaliers by beating them 120 to 95. And then the Thunder, of course, beat the Mavericks 117 to 95. And then on Thursday, we saw the Knicks win by 9 points. I think this is the game Jalen Brunson was having an issue with his right foot, and then he eventually came back into the game and absolutely played amazing, and he rallied back, and he helped the Knicks to overcome whatever deficit they were facing in the game, and of course he helped them win the game, and now they're leading 2-0 in terms of the series scoreboard. And then of course, moving on to Friday, we saw the Thunder lose to the Mavericks by losing by 9 points as they lost 110 to 119. And then we saw the Celtics get embarrassed in their own, I think this was in their own arena, as we saw the fans walk out of the building while there were still 4 minutes in the fourth quarter, I believe. If I'm mistaken, I will publish a retraction, but yeah, based on what I saw the fans walking out while there was still 4 minutes. They eventually lost 94 to 118, meaning now the series is tied 1-1. So the Celtics have a chance to get back. The series is more interesting. It's as not as concerning as the Timberwolves one, because if they win Game 3, then I don't see the Nuggets really coming back. And it would be sad to see a defending champion go out that way, and especially this was the most highly anticipated matchup. So to see it just phase out like that, and the Nuggets might possibly getting swept, it will be really sad to see that. But of course, we hope the Nuggets get it together and they eventually get one back. And then, of course, the fixtures are going to be that on Saturday, Timberwolves are going to face the Nuggets. Then the Mavericks are going to face the Thunder. And then on Sunday, the Cavaliers are going to face the Celtics. And then on Sunday again, the Pacers are going to face the Knicks. Okay, now moving on to some NBA news. The first story I want to highlight is that police announced on Wednesday that they have opened an investigation into NBA player and citizen altercation that happened at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on the night Bucks guard Patrick Beverley threw a ball at a fan in the final minutes of a season-ending loss to the Pacers. Police said in a news release the case has been forwarded to detectives who are currently investigating this situation and take all accusations seriously. Detectives will present the case to the Marion County Prosecutor's Office at the conclusion of the investigation, the release stated. Of course, it reads as follows again. Cameras within the arena showed Patrick Beverley sitting on the bench and tossing a ball into the stands, hitting a fan in the head. With about 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, at the end of the game on May the 2nd. After a different fan threw the ball back to Beverley, who was holding his arm out as to signal to say, "Give me the ball." The Bucks guard fired it back at the spectator, and eventually he had to be cooled down by his teammates as they were telling him to cool down and not to do that. And then, of course, the story that leads on that's connected with this one is that Milwaukee Bucks guard Patrick Beverley was suspended by the NBA on Thursday for 4 games without pay to begin next season for his actions during the after the final game of an Eastern Conference first round playoff series with the Indiana Pacers. The league announced the suspension and said Beverly was getting punished for forcefully throwing a basketball multiple times at spectators, which is something is seen as an unwritten rule in the NBA or in any sports of that matter. I understand being an athlete, you are always gonna have your emotions are always gonna play a role, but we are as an athlete. I'm not an athlete like that, but I what I've seen based on my experience, you're always told don't let the fans get to you, and if they get to you, don't get physical because it doesn't matter whether that person is wrong for saying what they're saying or whatever. At the end of the day, you are the bigger face. You're gonna be seen as the villain no matter what. Whether they said anything degrading or that made you upset, it doesn't matter. The world is not gonna see it that way. The world is gonna see you as the professional athlete attacking a civilian, and that's all the world is gonna see. So, and the story, the final statement of the story of the article is that an inappropriate interaction of a reporter during media availability. This was in the locker room where I think a reporter tried to ask Patrick Beverley a question, and he asked the reporter, "Do you subscribe to my podcast?" And then she said no, and then he was like, "Yeah, so I'm not going to answer any questions based on the fact that you don't subscribe to my podcast." And of course, he has come out and made a statement, or he has spoken about it on his podcast where he said his actions towards the fans, of course, were unacceptable, and he obviously regrets that. And then, of course, in regards to the media, to the locker room incident, he says that's something he has been doing all season. And I went through the proof myself. I saw him doing it multiple times where you were like, yeah, subscribe to the pod, or just asking reporters or just people or part of the media group, asking them to subscribe to his podcast. Even on during press conferences, he would jokingly be like, "Yeah, subscribe to my podcast," or "You didn't subscribe to my podcast," and so. But I think in this instance, people took offense to it because one, she's a woman, and two, it was coming off already an incident he had on the court with the fans. So obviously, people were not gonna be. And it didn't seem as he was joking. I know he said, "No, I've been doing this the whole season," but in that instant, it didn't seem like he was joking. He seemed serious. He was like, "Did you subscribe to my podcast?" No. And then, of course, yeah. But of course, we'll see how it eventually plays out. But of course, yeah, it's sad to see uh, both of these incidents occur because he's a great NBA player. He's had a very good career, whether it's shadowed with a little bit controversy here and there. He's obviously a great NBA player, and I just hope everything gets cleared out and he gets to finish out his career in the right way, as opposed to just being labeled as the villain of the league and the guy we need to get out. So yeah, the next story leads on. The next story is about Zion Williams, which states that federal a federal appeals court was upheld has upheld apologies has upheld a 2021 ruling that NBA star Zion Williams' contract with a marketing agent was void because the agent was not at the time was not licensed in North Carolina when the two entered an agreement in 2019. Florida-based agent Gina Ford had sought out $100 million from Williamson, claiming the former Duke All-American improperly broke an agreement she had in she had to represent him in endorsement deals. A federal judge in North Carolina found that Ford was not a licensed agent in the state at the time she entered the agreement with Williamson, and that their contract did not comply with the key requirements outlined by the state's sports agent law. The fact she hasn't, the fact that she wasn't licensed shielded Williamson from any penalties associated with breaking the contract. And so obviously she's not gonna get the $100 million that she wanted, and obviously she's not gonna get anything from Williamson because she was not licensed to be agent within that state. So obviously he was shielded from any penalties of breaking the contract, and obviously everything moves on. Okay, the next story is about Jamal Murray, the guard for the Nuggets, where the article reads as follows: Jamal Murray fined $100,000 for tossing objects onto court during Nuggets loss to Timberwolves. Denver Nuggets guard Jamal Murray was fined $100,000 by the NBA but avoided a suspension, which a lot of people were calling because they were saying, especially the hit pack that he threw onto the court during a play, it could have resulted in even in one of his team members stepping on it, rolling their ankles, or maybe blowing out their knee or something even more dangerous, like breaking their arm because it was just close to their feet. And as it was thrown onto the court, you can see it slide from foot to foot. And I think Cat was the person who almost stepped on it and planted his feet on it, and that could have resulted in a very bad injury for him or for anybody else who was involved in that play while the hit back was thrown. So, of course, the story reads on to say um, suspension for throwing multiple objects in the direction of a game official during live play. The league announced Tuesday Murray tossed a towel and a hit pack onto the court late in the second quarter of Denver's 106-80 loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves. That gave the Timberwolves a 2-0 lead in the Western Conference semifinal series that shifts to Minneapolis this weekend. The Nuggets were frustrated by the officiating as they fell behind by 28 points shortly before halftime. Okay, and the Heat pack toss gained the Heat toss garnered the most attention as TNT replays showed Mary sitting at the end of Denver's bench and throwing it onto the court. And the towel eventually threw it while play was still going on and the official was facing the play. So obviously they didn't see the both of the incidents. That's why they didn't signal him out and give him a technical foul or eject him from the game. But eventually the leagues went through the footages and suspended him. And fined him. Obviously, I don't think they could have suspended him, especially how the series is looking. Because obviously, if they suspend him now, then it gives Denver an excuse of saying, no, we were in a position to make a comeback and we are defending champions, but you suspended our key player, one of our key players. So how are we going to make a comeback if one of our key players is missing from action? So, but a lot of people were calling for his suspension because they called his actions flagrant and eventual and inexcusable, and of course very reckless because he could have hurt one of his teammates or even one of his opponents. And the fact that he came out and made a press conference which rubbed off a lot of people where he didn't really acknowledge fault for the whole incident and he maybe was trying to brush it off. I don't feel like that's what he was trying to do, but of course that's gonna rub people off if you do this type of actions and eventually when the reporter is asking you a question about the incidents and then you're trying to make it seem like, yeah, that's not really a basketball question. Can you ask any basketball questions? That is part of basketball because you are putting your fellow fellow colleagues in danger by throwing objects onto the court, as the court itself is already slippery. And if you've thrown something even if you've thrown onto the court a towel and a heat pack, obviously it's gonna cause damage to somebody or whoever steps on it. So of course, yeah. Okay, now let's move on to football, and of course we are gonna start off with the results. On Monday, we saw Crystal Palace beat the brakes of Manchester United. And as a Manchester United fan, at this point, I'm not even surprised. I was surprised a little bit, but to me, it was all a joke because I'm like, yo, Crystal Palace, seriously, 4-0, you are 2-0 down before halftime. And then after halftime, you guys go down, concede two more goals. So at this point of the season, I'm not gonna be surprised by any result they really put out. I have no faith in them beating Man City in the FA Cup final. I think that they are really gonna be hammered by Man City in that game, and Man City eventually is gonna become the champions. They're gonna be the FA Cup champions, and the remaining games I think is against Arsenal and Newcastle, and I don't know who else they're playing. So yeah, the season might really end bad because now Chelsea is above them. Imagine the season Chelsea has had from spending an enormous, inaccessible, exorbitant amount of money to buy new players, and the rebuilding, getting a new coach, firing a coach in his first, I think in his first and a half season, didn't even finish his contract, and they are above Man United, whose coach has been in the position I think for 2 to 3 years now. So I don't know. A lot of people are calling for the manager to lose his job. And I think at this point, yeah, at this point, I will have to agree because it feels like he has lost control of the club. I mean, he got rid of Ronaldo, citing that Ronaldo was a problem. He's toxic he's creating a toxic environment in terms of the club. And yeah, he needed to go for the team to recover and rebuild, and that worked for a couple of weeks, and then the cracks really opened up, and the floodgates really just flooded the club with a lot of drama. Got rid of Sancho. I mean, he sidelined Sancho and eventually got rid of him. Sancho is now playing in a Champions League final in a few days or next month, if I'm mistaken. He had issues with other players like Rashford and so on. So at this point, I think it's just time to call it an end and find somebody who's suitable. But at the end of the day, as I've said before, Man United have to stop with this mindset of saying, let's just get in top management or top players and everything is going to be fixed. No, you have to start from ground up. You have to make sure those players actually want to play for the club and they are going to put their heart and soul in. And that's all I have to say about that. So the next result is that Salernitana, apologies for mispronouncing it, lost to Atalanta 2-1. Udinese and Napoli due to a 1-1 draw. And then, of course, Lille lost to Lyon by losing 4-3. And then Ahali lost to Hilal. Apologies for mispronouncing the club's name. Lost to Hilal 2-1. And then on Tuesday, we saw PSG, of course, get knocked out of the Champions League as they lost 1-0, which made it 2-0 in Dortmund's favor on aggregate. So Dortmund are going to play in the final. They're going to play against Real Madrid. Then on Wednesday, we saw Club Brugge beat, Joe, play out to a 1-1 draw with Fiorentina. And that made it an aggregate of 3-4, meaning Fiorentina are going ahead in the UEFA Europa Conference League. I think they are going to the semi-final, if I'm not mistaken. And then on Thursday, we saw Atalanta, of course, beat Marseille 3-0, making it a 4-1 aggregate lead. Meaning, yeah, that Marseille is out, Atalanta moving forward. And then Leverkusen, of course, drew 2-2 with Roma, making it an aggregate of 4-2 in their favor. And that means their unbeaten record continues. They are now unbeaten in a total of 49 games. So that's very impressive, of course. And then we saw Olympiacos beat Aston Villa 2-0, making it a 6-2 aggregate. Aston Villa had no chance. So they came this far, but yeah, now it's time to pack up and go home. Then we go to the Saudi League, and before I pronounce the results, I just want to apologize for mispronouncing the names. I might mispronounce the names based because of this is my first time covering the Saudi League in terms of giving out the results, and I haven't really had time to practice the names. So moving on, we had Drew 0-0 with Taiwan 2-1, Taiwan. Okay, Faha drew with 2-2 with Feta, and then Akud they lost to Nasser 3-2. And then, yeah, that's all. Then football news from fan to hero, and this is Joselu's dream story. As 2 years ago, Mato was just another Real Madrid fan cheering in the stands of the Stade de France as it won a record extending 14th European Cup. On Wednesday, the journeyman striker scored two late goals to achieve another memorable Madrid comeback in a 2-1 win over Bayern Munich, and this led to them sending them back to the Champions League final. And this is a quote. It says, "I try and make the most of my chance," the 34-year-old Joselu said. As for 2 years ago, this was how it feels to be a Real Madrid fan. I had the opportunity to go and support Real Madrid, and now I get to experience it firsthand on the football field. Okay, the second story, which also is relating to Real Madrid and the Champions League game, Bayern offside is latest Champions League controversy for ref Marciniak after World Cup final successes. It has been a challenging season in the Champions League for the 2022 World Cup final referee Simon Marciniak, apologies for mispronouncing his name, and his support officials from Poland. Two two spotted two spotted time decision by Marciniak and his team affected Bayern Munich in the semi-finals on Wednesday, and of course the other game which was in a group stage where Newcastle and PSG played out, and people felt like Newcastle should have moved on in that game. They should have won that game but the officiating that game was being called out as to the penalty I think that was awarded to PSG. The article goes on to say, yeah, and Newcastle in a group stage game in November have fueled referee controversies that are rare in the elite level competition. Both times, Marciniak's and his team's interventions seem to go against the widely understood advice UEFA gives match officials for its games. Don't stop play immediately for tight offside calls. If you are not sure, don't call the offside and let the play out, and VAR will eventually clean it up. And don't award a penalty for handball when the ball has deflected off a player's own body. And this was the problem people had in the PSG game, as they thought that the Newcastle player, when that penalty was given for handball, the ball, I think, initially bounced off his leg or his thigh and touched his hand, and people were like, how is that a penalty if it deflected off his body? So yeah. And then the next story reads as to say, Spanish judge confirms Rubles will stand trial for kiss on player after Women's World Cup final. Former Spanish soccer president Luis Rubles will stand trial on charges of sexual assault and coercion for kissing forward Jenny Hermoso without her consent after last year's Women's World Cup final. A Spanish judge confirmed on Wednesday. Judge Francisco de Jorge had ruled in January that Rubles' case was unconsented and carried out and unilaterally and and in a surprising fashion. Spanish news agent EFE reported that he was confirmed he has confirmed the judge. Prosecutors seek a prison sentence of 2.5 years for Rubles for the alleged sexual assault and for allegedly trying to coerce him also to publicly support him and amid the public backlash where people were calling him out and saying you should have not done that, especially if it's not consented. The judge also ruled that former Spain coach Jorge Vilda, the sports director of Spain's men's team, Al Albert Luque, apologies for mispronouncing the names, and the federation's former head of marketing, Ruben Rivera, will also stand trial for trying to pressure him also, EFE said. They tried to coerce or they tried to convince her not to go public or to support and say that the kiss was consented and or consensual. So eventually they will also face trial for trying to coerce her into making a false claim. So yeah, that's all I had for the sports section. Let's move on to the next section. Okay, now the question segment. If you want to get involved, as I said before, leave a comment down below. Follow me on my various social media platforms, and you can get your questions in. I'll look at the questions and deem and see if they are appropriate for the platforms that we operate in, which is primarily YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble. But of course, send your questions through. If they are not, if I'm not able to put them on YouTube, I'll still give you a response. So without dragging on, let's go on. Let's move on to the first question. The first question is, does playing sports calm you down or not? I would say it depends on days. If I'm gonna play a particular sport and I'm not really into it, I'm just playing it for the fun, I might be smiling more and I might be chilled a bit because I'm not really trying to compete for anything. But if I'm playing a sport where I really want to win, because I have a very addictive personality and a very competitive spirit, so if I get into a game, I want to make sure I come out on top. I want to make sure that I have played out. I've played to the best of my abilities. So there are times where I'm chilled, I'm smiling, and so. But there are times where I'm absolutely trying to destroy my opponent and trying to get the dub. So obviously there are days where I'm happy to participate in certain sports codes, and there are days where I'm not, because either I'm losing or I'm just not feeling how the situation is going, whether I feel like people are calling fouls that are not fouls or so and so. But even it's a 50-50. It's not a one-sided I can't give you a one-sided answer because it depends on days and the people around me also, and eventually my commitment to the particular sport code. But yeah, it's a 50-50 answer that I'm gonna have to give. And then, have you ever been seriously injured playing sports? I have, but that was a long time ago. I think that was when I was playing soccer. I mean football in the streets. And then I got tackled and both of my knees kind of skidded off the paved road. And yeah, those are the two injuries that even at this stage of my life, I still feel. If I go an extended period without working out or without participating in any particular sport code, I can feel my knees are like, broski, you gotta do something to keep us healthy. Otherwise, we're gonna keep pressuring you and we're gonna keep showing you flames. So that, I think that's the only play I remember like seriously getting injured from. Because my thing is, I think from that play I've always been mindful of how I move and how I jump into tackles or jump into scenarios where I might collide with somebody or a particular object in the direction. Oh, of course, I forgot I collided with the metal structure that holds up a basketball I went shoulder in, but it wasn't the bone that went in, it was kind of like the flesh down here. But I don't deem that as serious. At the time it was serious, and I felt like I popped out my shoulder, but when I got home I eventually just saw that I just kind of like got a scratch here, and I was thankful that it wasn't really the bone that holds my shoulder in place. It was just the mid section down here. But yeah, I haven't really had any other injuries apart from those two. And then question number 3: do you have or do you got risks? Absolutely zero risk. I have no risk at all. And I think this is one of the reasons why I don't approach women. One of the reasons, but the main reason is I've stated that in the previous video, is that I don't constantly go out and try and try and boost people's egos, but I have no risk at all. I have some funny jokes that I've seen who have worked on in certain scenarios, and I've seen that I've said certain things that might give me an advantage, but overall, raising up people, I'm absolutely the worst. If in that situation, if you want me to be a wingman, I'm not absolutely gonna be the worst wingman in the history of the whole wingman history. I really have no reason. And yeah, question number 4: name one thing in the societal realm that makes you angry and why. I think it's just the fact that kids nowadays have absolutely no respect for their elders, for themselves, and just for the world in general. Like, I really get upset when I see a kid disrespecting their parent or disrespecting an elder. And if it's me, I get to a point where I'm not trying to advertise violence or anything, but I get to a point where I'm like, you are lucky you are not my family or anything, because I would have really put you in your place. I feel like kids nowadays are soft, and they are privileged, and they are spoiled, and they don't really fear authority anymore. They feel like they can go out and say whatever they want, do whatever they want. No one is really gonna check them. And if you're a kid out there and you have a tendency of disrespecting people, I just hope you don't run into me, because if you run into me, I'm gonna check you. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you got, how much money, who your parents were. If you disrespect me or somebody within my vicinity and I see it, I'm gonna check you. And that's something, apart from a lot of things, that's something that really makes me angry, because I know these people one day are gonna be leaders, they're gonna be in position of powers, and if you don't have respect from an early age, there's no way you're really ever gonna be a great leader. Because if you can't respect people, you can't respect your elders, how are you gonna lead anybody? How are you gonna influence anybody to do anything? How are you gonna be a force for good in the world? So that's something that really makes me angry. There's a couple of things, but at the top of my head, that's something that I would say really makes me angry. So question number 5: will corruption ever be eradicated? I would say no. As long as we human beings exist, corruption will never end. Because the thing is, people are good until a certain amount of money is dangled in front of them, or they see a certain amount of money in a lifestyle, and that's where you really get to test the true character of a man, when you put an exorbitant amount of money in front of him, or just introduce him to a certain lifestyle and see exactly who he is as a man, and what type of a man he is, and if his morals and his beliefs can be bought, and if he can be swayed to do certain things that go against his morals and his beliefs. So of course, corruption will never be eradicated. It's always going to be one of those situations that's just going to be there. Because at the end of the day, we have to be honest, we are all corrupt. We all partake in certain small corruption activities here. Let's say you cook a certain amount of meat. You are going to put a certain amount of meat aside for yourself. And even when you serve, you're still going to give yourself more pieces, or you're going to give a certain individual more pieces or more food based on the fact that they're your sibling, parent, and so on and so on. And also, we are just all corrupt in our own ways. It's just that for the The corruption that we know this is the corruption that happens in public offices, where the corruption can really hurt people on a global scale, where money goes missing, money that should have been used to pave roads, rebuild hospitals or build hospitals, build or restructure, and just help the community grow. That money eventually goes missing, or positions that were supposed to go to a particular section of people has now been diverted to other people based on the fact that these people are family members and so and so. But I don't think corruption will ever just disappear. I think it might get to a point where maybe it might be tapered a bit, but I don't think it will ever be like it just disappear. Question number 6: advice you would give your younger self. I'm still relatively young, but the advice that I'll give my younger self is buckle up. It's gonna be a tough ride. You're gonna encounter a lot of obstacles. You're gonna lose a lot of people. You're gonna have to get rid of a lot of people you thought were your friends. A lot of people you thought were there for you. You're gonna have family members turn their back on you, disregard you, and not see you as valuable until you eventually prove your value. Then they're eventually going to try and come back into your life, and life is going to kick you in the head, and you're going to have a lot of obstacles. You're going to have a lot of days where you feel like you're worthless, and you just have to persevere. You just have to put your head down, work hard, and don't be mindful of what everybody's trying to say, because at the end of the day, it's your life. You have to structure your life in a way that's going to make you happy and make you be a force for good for the world in general. So that's the main advice I would say. Just buckle up and make sure you don't. And the other one is, make sure you don't compromise yourself in trying to fit in, or just trying to be accepted. You're gonna be misunderstood, and that's how it is. So yeah, I think that's advice that I'll give my younger self. And yeah, moving into the next question: what is your lowest point in your life? I'm not gonna discuss that on camera. Maybe on another day, but I'm not gonna put my business out like that. So I'm gonna skip that question, or I would reply to that question in a face-to-face situation. I'm not gonna put it on camera. So moving on to the next question is question 8: what do you miss about being a toddler or just a child in general? I mean, the freedom and the support, the backbone. As a kid, you always had, for me, relatively, that can be debated, but for most people as a kid, you always have that support. You fall down, people tell you, oh, you can get up, you can do it. And as an adult, you really get that people watch you fall and they're like, yeah, you can get up. They won't say it, but they'll be like, yeah, you can get up, you can do it. No one will really be there to like hold your hand, be like, which I don't think is something that should be done, but we all need a support system. We all need a backbone to move forward in life. So what I miss as a kid is the freedom, just to have no major responsibilities. You just go out there, enjoy life, and you really, really enjoy and love life, and you get to appreciate the things around you. And just the support system and the backbone. I think those are the two main things that I miss about being a child. Just being a child, having fun, not having any major responsibilities. So question number 9: do you have female friends? And this is a question, this is an old age question, and I think I'm gonna have a debate about it in my next episode, or in another project that I'm working on. But I would say no, I don't believe in having female friends, and this is a new mindset for me. It's a mindset that I've adopted for the past 2 years, no, the past 3 years, because as I was growing up and as I was in high school, I was like, of course, guys and girls can be friends. And then I eventually got myself in those situations where I was friends with girls, and I just saw how bad it was, especially for me, because I got to a point where the first relationship or friendships I had, I got into them because I was friend zoned. I was trying to raise the girls up, and they were like, yo, broski, you ain't got it. So how about you just remain my friends, and and eventually it was a horror show. I stayed in there hoping that, yeah, maybe maybe she's gonna see my value. I just gotta put my head down and work hard. That didn't work out. And at the end of the day, the one thing I've realized, and it's a controversial topic, and people always saying, yeah, not true, but yeah. The thing is, for me personally, if I'm interacting with a girl, there's only two options or three options that are gonna occur from that interaction. One, I'm gonna see her as family. She's gonna become a family member of mine. And two, I'm gonna see her as a spouse. And three, it's just gonna be, the interaction is just gonna end there. I'm not gonna take a number. I'm not gonna invest any time into it, and that's it. There's no middle ground where I'm like, yeah, she's just my friend, because I know eventually something is gonna happen. And especially for me, the more time I spend with her, the more interactions I spend with her, and the more time and energy I invest into the relationship, eventually I'm gonna fall for her, and it's just not gonna work out. And yeah, that's basically it. I don't have any female friends that I can say these are my female friends. I have females who are not my family by blood, but who I consider family. And yeah, they either go in that box or they become a spouse of mine. If they or they just the interaction just phases out. There's no middle ground of me saying, yeah, I just have this is my friend who that's not for me. It's not for everybody, and as I've said, it's a controversial topic, and it's not for everybody. There are people out there who actually can coexist as a male and a female friend. I'm not saying it's an alien thought, but yeah, for me specifically, and I've seen for a lot of guys, it's not something that really works out. Most guys stay in the friend zone because they are hoping that the girl will eventually see their value and give them a chance. But yeah. The last question number 10. If people don't like me or I am constantly being misunderstood, do I need to compromise myself and throw away my beliefs to try and fit in? Absolutely not. You are who you are. Work on yourself. Work on your life. Work on your legacy. Build your foundation and move on. Being misunderstood is the core value of you knowing your value and making sure you don't let anybody tell you otherwise and compromise. Don't compromise yourself, because eventually you're going to hate yourself. You're going to see a phony as you look in the mirror. You're going to see a phony and you're going to be like, who is this person? This is not me. I know I don't want to do this. I don't want to drink this. I don't want to go out here. I don't want to partake in all these activities that don't align with my beliefs. I don't want to curse people out and so and so. So don't compromise yourself. Be yourself, and you will eventually find your village that accepts you for who you are, and you eventually will progress in life. So just be yourself. Don't compromise yourself, and don't let anybody tell you you are worthless or you are not worthy of being loved or being accepted. At the end of the day, not to be great, you are going to be misunderstood. You're not going to be accepted by everybody, and there are going to be people who are jealous of you and who are not just going to like you for who you are and for where you're trying to do. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, and if you did, please subscribe to the show, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I drop new content on the show. I mean on the channel. So with that being said, love. I'll see you in the next one. Chop chop.